سبيل الدموع سبيل مريح تنهدى يا صاحي كي تستريح وبث الدعاء الخفي الصريح يسعك الفضاء الرحيم الفسيح.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. May Allah Azza wa Jalla accept our sitting, accept our coming to listen the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala He wants from us, we as Muslims, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala He wants from us, what are the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so that we can worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a way pleasing to Him. The only ibadah and worship that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would accept is that worship which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala He has mentioned to us, He has commanded us, and this is shown to us by Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala He commands us to perform salah, wa aqimus salah, then that salah will only be accepted if that salah is in the line of what? The salah of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. Despite our ikhlas, despite our sincerity, despite our efforts, if our salah is not according to the salah of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, our salah is mardud, not accepted. So may Allah Azza wa Jal accept our coming today. And today inshallah we're going to start a very important topic, the topic of the Fiqh of Halal and Haram, the laws pertaining to Halal and Haram. What is halal and what is any haram? Many a times when a person hears halal and haram, you think, okay, it's just connected to what? To food. We have the brochure, this halal, that place haram. No. Halal and haram, this is what? This is what the entire life of a believer, all aspects of the life of a believer, what is halal, what is lawful and what is unlawful. What Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala He has made lawful for us and what He has made unlawful for us. So piety and righteousness is not just kathratul ibadat. It's just not performing lots of salah and making lots of what ibadat. That is not piety and righteousness only. But piety and righteousness is abstaining from that in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made haram. And how does a person know what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala He has made haram? A person, he has to learn. A person is not excused for what? For not knowing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala He mentions, فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Ask the people of knowledge if you don't know. So a person cannot say, I don't know and stop like that. And he is what? That person is not excused. So righteousness and piety is not, as we mentioned, not only what? Increasing our acts of ibadah, but also what? Abstaining from that which is haram. And in doing that, then we need to learn what are those things that are haram, so we can what? Abstain from it. So this first 10-15 minutes inshallah we will what? The class would be what? More of an introduction to the topic. And as we mentioned, this is an interactive class, it's not a lecture bayan. I get lecture and bayan. We still have the multi-lectures, right? Multi-lectures and khutbah for Friday, inshallah. Alright, so whatever you don't understand, please ask. Alright. First we start with the concept of halal and haram. What is the concept of something being halal, something being haram? This is halal in Islam, this is haram in Islam. What is the concept of any halal and haram in Islam? Understand the term halal. The word halal is a term used to refer to those things that are lawful, those things that are permissible. When you hear the word halal, halal, it means what? Those things that are permissible, those things that are lawful in the Sharia. This is what is meant by halal. Haram is a term used to refer to those things that are impermissible, those things that are unlawful. So understand, the things that are halal, listen carefully. The things that are halal, it is not obligatory on a person, right, to partake of everything which is halal or do everything which is halal. Understand carefully. There are many things that are halal, but it's not obligatory upon us to do everything which is halal. That is impossible anyhow. But what is obligatory upon us is that whatever we do, whatever action we choose to do, it must be halal. It must be lawful. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made many types of drinks halal, many types of businesses halal, many types of things to eat halal. So we don't have to go and eat everything which is halal. No, that is impossible. But what we choose to eat, what we choose to do, that action of ours, it must be lawful. It must be halal. So the concept of halal and haram is not only restricted to consumables, what we eat, what we drink. No, it has a deeper meaning. It encompasses every aspect of human life. Right? Every aspect of human life, what is the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? That's why when they stand in the Tablighi Hazrats, when they give the 6 points, right? They speak about ilm. And the least amount of knowledge that a person should have is to know what is halal and what is haram. That is a vast, that's an ocean of knowledge, if you understand what that means. What is permitted, what is lawful and what is unlawful. We are doing business. What are those actions that are lawful? What are those actions that are unlawful? What are those transactions that are lawful? Transactions that are haram? We're going to eat. We have We have marriage. We have business. We have families. Every single aspect. Meaning what the Sharia allows and what the Sharia it prohibits. It is incumbent on each and every person. They need to learn that. So, the Sharia reserves the authority, the sole authority to declare what is halal and what is haram. Many a times you hear people loosely using the term halal and haram. Yeah, that halal, don't worry, that halal. Hey, see that haram. Understand, when we say something is halal, what we mean, what we are saying, who is the legislator? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is his sole legislator. So when we say this is halal, we are we are saying according to Allah, this is halal. We are representing the Sharia, right? We are representing the Sharia by saying, okay, this is halal and this is haram. Right? So it's very it's something very serious. So how can a person say something he has no knowledge of? If he understands and he knows that this is halal, yes, he can say this is halal. Right? According to, this is halal according to that sheikh or that alim, according to the sheikh, that is halal. He has proper knowledge, right? That this is halal. Right? He doesn't just make up and say this is halal and that is haram. No. So the Sharia reserves the authority to declare what is halal and what is haram. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has restricted the authority to legislate what is haram and what is halal. That is not in the hands of any human being. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is Ar-Rasul, a messenger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He conveys from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala what is halal and what is haram. So the sole legislator is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? So the sole concept of halal and haram is solely based on the laws of the Sharia and not upon a person's likes or dislike. A person dislikes something, that haram. Khalas, if you dislike something, you just don't like it, right? But you cannot put a shar'i hukum. You cannot put the hukum of Allah Azza wa Jal, a ruling of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, say that is that is haram, right? So halal and haram is not based on our likes and dislikes. So what is the role of, and we mentioned this many times in our fiqh classes, so then what is the role of the alim? What is the role of the scholar? The role of the scholar, understand, it does not go beyond clarifying what is halal and haram. Right? The role of a scholar, it does not go beyond conveying and explaining what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made halal or what He has made haram. Bas. It means that, listen, no alim, no scholar can make something halal or make something haram. What he does, he conveys, right? He conveys to the mass, he conveys to the people, according to Islam, this is haram. According to Islam, that is haram. That is all he can do. He cannot legislate, right? He cannot legislate. So as we mentioned, the implications of a person's statement, right? The implication of a person's statement by saying this is halal and this is haram, right? What that person is actually saying, he's actually saying according to the Sharia, such and such is lawful and such is what? Unlawful. In our books of fiqh, our books of aqidah, the Imam al-Tahawi rahimahullah ta'ala, he mentions, Man ahalla ma harramahu Allah faqad kafar. That person who makes something halal, that which is haram, then that person, that is what? That is kufr and disbelief. And vice versa. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala declares something as what? Haram, and a person what? Declares it as being halal, then that is what? That is kufr, that is disbelief. So declaring something lawful which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prohibited, that which Allah azza wa jalla has made unlawful, that is what? That is a major sin, tantamount to kufr. So a person should not attribute to the Sharia that which he has no knowledge of. Okay? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentions, وَلَا تَقُولُوا لِمَا تَصِفُ أَلْسِنَتُكُمُ الْكَذِبِ هذا حلال وهذا حرام لتفتروا على الله الكذب. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentions in Quran, right? And do not say, right, concerning falsehood which your tongues utter, this is halal, هذا حلال وهذا حرام, without having any knowledge. This is what? Actually what? Fabricating lies against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A person what? Mentions something which is haram, this is haram, that is halal. The opposite to what? The ruling of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then Allah subhanahu, this is what? A fabrication against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is a person directly lying against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's a major sin. Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, he mentions with regards to himself, Man kathaba alayya muta'ammidan falyatabawwa maq'adahu minan nar. That person who lies against me, who says a lie against me, falyatabawwa maq'adahu minan nar, then that person should take his abode in the fire of Jahannam. This is for a person who deliberately lies against what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. فَلْيَتَبَوَّ مَقْعَدَهُ مِنَ النَّارِ. Then that person should take his abode in the fire of Jahannam. What about that person who what? Deliberately lies against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He prohibits something, when He makes something unlawful, prohibited, is through His what? Divine wisdom and hikmah. And whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made prohibited for us, He has made what? Unlawful for us, is something which is what? Actually harmful for us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is our creator, right? He knows what is what? Beneficial for us, and He knows what is harmful for us. So all that which Allah Azza wa Jal has made prohibited for us is in fact really harmful for us. So it is harmful for us, it is harmful for our well-being. And many people, they have what? The concept that, not Muslims, alhamdulillah, non-Muslims, right? They would say that, what is one of their deterrents and hindrance in accepting Islam? But if I accept Islam, but everything what haram. You can't do this and you can't do that. You can't eat this and you can't eat that. You can't drink this and you can't drink that. Everything what prohibited. Right? Listen, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made prohibited is minimum. Alright? And what Allah Azza wa Jalla is minimum or minimal. And what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made permissible, and lawful for us is what? Khalas, la hadda lahu. There's no boundaries. Right? There's no boundaries. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as we mentioned, what He has made prohibited is not good for us, is harmful for us. Look for example what? Trade. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentions, أَحَلَّ اللَّهُ الْبَيْعَ وَحَرَّمَ الرِّبَى. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has made trade permissible. Right? And we have all different types of trade, especially in this time. All different types of trade. Hey, listen, all of that is what? Halal. All of that is lawful. What is unlawful, what is haram? Those trade that what incurs riba. Those what contracts, right? An agreement that involves riba and interest. Khalas. So all other what trade agreement, all other business contracts and business arrangement is jaiz and permissible, lawful. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has made riba, usury, interest, haram. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has prohibited intoxicants. Right? So it's like some people, the only thing that they can drink is what? Is rum. Beside intoxicants, the amount of what? Beverages and drinks, right? That is lawful and permissible for a person to what? To consume is what? Is countless. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala understand here. Listen, a person can drink anything. Yes or what? Don't drink alcohol, don't drink blood, and don't drink urine. That is all. No alcohol, no blood, and no urine. And everything else, listen, you can drink. Khalas. And if you look at these three things over here, right, we understand the negative impact, how the harm it has on the body and the filth it has. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made adultery haram. Khalas. We have nikah, ijab and qabul, offer and acceptance, how you could listen, you could do a nikah in what, less than a minute time. So besides what? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has what made nikah permissible. He has made zina and fornication haram. And not only that, Allah Azza wa Jalla, He mentions in the Quran, listen, فَانْكِحُوا مَا طَابَ لَكُمْ مَثْنَى وَالثُّلَاثَ وَرُبَاعَ. You can have up to 4 if you want. So the allowance is there. With regards to what? For example, clothing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made what? Silk haram for the men to wear. So if you look at what? That fabric, silk, as compared to what all the other fabric outside. Right? Everything else permissible to wear. Just what? Silk and gold for men, not permissible to wear. But understand the silk that we're speaking, even what? Look, the silk that we're speaking here about is what? The original silk. Right? You don't really find original silk in the market. We're speaking about silk from what? The silkworm. Right? Not the synthetic silk that looks like silk and feels like silk, but is what? Synthetic. That you can wear. Even they call it silk, you can wear that. The silk that is made what? Prohibited is this original silk that comes from what? The silkworm. So all of these things, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has made what? Any prohibited, it is harmful for us, it has no benefit any for us in this life and the next life. And what Allah Azza wa Jal has what? Made permissible and unlawful for us is what? Full of any benefits, right? In this life and the next life. Whatever is what? Conducive to haram is also haram. Alright? Understand? If something is what? Prohibited, right? Something is prohibited, then anything that leads to it also becomes prohibited. That is why Allah Azza wa Jalla mentions in the Quran, وَلَا تَقْرَبُوا الزِّنَا, and do not approach zina. Do not approach adultery. One is okay, do not commit adultery. Okay, that is a sin, that is haram. But then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentions also, and do not approach. So anything that will lead to that, right? All these what? All these relationship that is out of marriage, all of these things are what? Totally what? Prohibited. Understand? Even though what? In the Sharia there's nothing like how you call this? Engagement. What is meant by that? Listen, they can have an engagement, they're going to get married next what? Next 2-3 months. Nothing wrong with that. But understand, engagement doesn't change the Sharia ruling. Right? When they become what? Husband and wife through marriage, okay, that changes the ruling. Now they are husband and wife through marriage. So long as marriage didn't take place and nikah didn't take place, then all relation and what? Correspondence become any haram. Some people believe that, listen, they're going to get married or date already set so they can go, they can date, they can, all this is what? Totally what? Haram. It is totally haram and prohibited. Right? So the jurists, they have established a criterion that states, listen, whatever is conducive or leads towards haram, that in itself is haram. Right? Whatever leads to haram, that in itself is haram. And also, the principle, it states that, listen, sometimes that sin is not only limited, that haram, the sin for that haram is not only limited for the what? The perpetrator of that act. There are certain acts that are haram, that are unlawful, and that what? That action, not only the one directly involved is committing a sin, but whatever is connected to that action, everybody that is connected, every single individual connected to that action becomes sinful also. When Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he speaks about what? Riba, for example, interest, usury, akiluhu wa mukiluhu wa shahidu wa shahida wa katibuhu kulluhum fi sawa. The one who actually takes the interest, right? The one who gives the interest, the one who takes the interest, the one who writes the interest contract, the one who witnesses, all of them are guilty in the same way, right? All of them are guilty in the same way. I'm not taking any interest, I just what? I'm just a witness to the contract. I'm just writing the interest what? Contract. Nabi alayhi salatu wasallam mentioned all of them are sinful. And similarly what? Nabi alayhi salatu wasallam, he mentioned with regards to intoxicants, he mentioned with regards to any alcohol, the one what? The one who is pressing it, squeezing what? The grapes, right? That person is sinful. The one whom it is pressed for, that is sinful. The one who drinks it, he is sinful. The one who carries it for him, he is sinful. The one who transports. So every single individual connected to that, he is sinful. Many a times you'll hear, well, listen, I'm not drinking that. I just delivering it. I just what? Carrying it. I just selling it. I just whatever. We can what? Try to justify ourselves, but this is the hadith of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. Kulluhum fihi sawa. All of them are guilty. All of them are equally guilty. The prohibition of falsely labeling something haram as halal. Listen, when something is haram, it remains haram. You don't just change the label and it becomes halal. Alright? The Sharia, but this is what Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he mentioned, right? He mentioned many ahadith that speaks about this time, our time. He mentioned that time would come, people would what? People would consume alcohol, right? وَيُسَمُّونَهُ بِغَيْرِ اسْمِ. They will consume alcohol, but they will what? They would just change the name. How many names we have for alcohol today? Many names we have, right? So by changing the name doesn't change the ruling, right? The thing remains the same. The action what? Remains the same. So if a person were to change the ruling, a person what? He has, a person selling pork, sometimes your pastor is serious. A person what? Selling pork, that could ever be halal? So even when a person mentions, okay, this meat is halal, it would not change the ruling, right? So labeling, falsely labeling something as halal, which is in actual fact haram, that doesn't change the ruling, right? If you look at what? Many interest-bearing contracts, right? That the bank, that they offer, you may not see the word interest, right? You may not see the word interest, so sometimes you're looking, okay, this contract, it has no interest. But understand, with regards to contracts, the i'tibar, what is considered is what? The ma'ani type, not the alfaz, not just the wording. The contract itself, what it entails. So you could read a contract, it doesn't have the word interest, it doesn't have the word usury. But if you study the contract properly, you see that this is an interest-bearing transaction. Even though it doesn't have the word interest or usury, right? You may have the word what benefit or bonus or whatever. That doesn't change the meaning, right? Many a times we look at what, even what the things that we eat. If you look at what the ingredients at the back, some people just look for what? Oh, this have no gelatin in it. It's good. You have all these E numbers, right? What it represents, what it means. You might see the word gelatin, right? So it doesn't mean if you don't see the word if gelatin not there, it's halal and permissible, right? These things are coded, so we need to learn these things, right? So the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, listen, sometimes with regards to what? Indecent acts that are haram, right? They change the name from, listen, adultery and fornication is harsh words, right? There's partners, there's friends, they have enough, whatever. So the changing of these words, right, it doesn't have any effect, right? As we mentioned, what engagement also. If a nikah is not done, they are still total strangers. They are strangers. The boy and the girl, the man and the woman, they are total strangers. What makes things halal and permissible? And nikah, right? So falsely labeling the haram as halal does not change the ruling. And also what? Good intentions do not make the haram acceptable. My heart clean, I do not find good purpose, I do not find good cause, right? Understand? Haram remains haram, no matter how good your intention is, or how honorable the purpose, and how lofty the aim is, right? Understand? A person, for example, he accumulates wealth through gambling, through what? Usury, interest. But you know what? His intention is to give it to the poor. His intention is to what? To benefit the poor. That does not make it what? A permissible action. His good intentions, a person's good intention does not make a haram, unlawful act halal. However good your intention is, right? And however, some people what? They know it's haram, but you know what? They talk to this one and talk to that one and they get support, right? So if you get the support of the entire community, the entire world, that does not change any which Allah Azza wa Jal has made haram, right? So even a person has good intention, right? That doesn't change the hukum. So much so what the ulama they have mentioned, that is what? Tantamount to kufr. A person, for example, he stealing is haram, to accumulate money, right? Or he deliberately what? Engages in riba to what? To receive money, or deliberately gambles to receive money, right? With the intent of giving it to the poor, with the intent of sadaqah. Allah Azza wa Jalla said, Sadaqa awwalan taqa'u ala yadi ar-Rahman. First, before that sadaqah what goes anywhere, that sadaqah, it goes to the hands of ar-Rahman, of Allah Azza wa Jalla. How can a person get closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by disobeying Allah Azza wa Jal? That is in fact what a mockery. A person what? Getting close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with that which Allah Azza wa Jal has made prohibited. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made what? Gambling prohibited. He has made usury prohibited. So if a person what does that intentionally, understand? Intentionally with the intent of what? Giving sadaqah to the poor, then that is tantamount to kufr. Forget what getting rewards at all. Right? Understand? Here we're not speaking about, listen, we're speaking about a person's deliberate action. Right? Understand? There are certain accounts that people have, bank accounts. The intent of the account is not to accumulate interest. We're not speaking about that. But there are certain accounts that now and then you would see some interest what? Coming into the account. Right? Interest what? Comes into the account. So what a person does, he takes the interest and what? He gets rid of it. Right? Gets rid of it. And how he would get rid of it? Normally what? This money is haram money. So haram money is supposed to go back to its original owners. But in a case like this, it's not possible to give it back to the original owner. Who going to own? Who owning this? So this is where the ulama they mention, give it to the poor, right? Give it to the poor not with the intent of giving sadaqah, no. Give it to the poor with the intent of takhallus, of what? Ridding yourself of that money. Alright? And understand the thing about riba and interest, as we understand, a person should not what? Understand, a person is not allowed for a person to what? To enter, to have a bank account that is what? An interest, specifically interest bearing any account. Some people of the assumption that, you know what? You can use it to what? To build toilets, you can use it for this, you can use it for that. Listen, it's not allowed for a person to what? Transact, to have any you need to have an interest bearing any transaction, right? Here we're speaking about what if, right? If a person what incurs interest in his account, right, for whatever reason, then what? Take it and get rid of it. A person cannot benefit from that, right? He cannot benefit from that.
So let's say you have an account and you see like a $20 interest coming in.
Yeah.
Is it necessary to physically go to the bank, take over this $20?
No. There's a qaida, a principle that the fuqaha mentioned, al-darahim la tata'ayyan bit-ta'yin, al-fulus la tata'ayyan bit-ta'yin. Meaning what? These money are not specified, meaning what? It's not specified, alright? Even though you specify it. For example, listen, if you go to a shop, the item costs $10, right? This mouse, it costs $10. And you tell the shopkeeper, I'm going to give you this $10 for this item, right? What is specified here is this item. He cannot give you except this item. This is specified. But you know your specification here is not specified. Meaning what? You can give him an next $10 if you want. If you want, you can give him $2 $5, right? If you want to give him 10 singles, right? But he cannot give you except this item. So similarly, you have what? You check the account, $20 come, right? So you take what? You go on your travel, you go print a song, you pay $20 and you go to it. No, tell us. You have a $20, you give it in what? That is what? You take it out and you give it to the poor. So that $20 would be that, that $20 interest that you have in the account there. So even though you see interest, somebody, you already clear that. Alright? You already clear that. Alright? Also, some people have the assumption that, listen, the interest comes in, alright, $20 for example, but then at the end of the month, the bank taking out that $20 service charge. You know what? I'm going to, right? So you know what? 20 for 20. You know it don't work like that. Alright? You cannot offset that service charge with what? Interest. Why? Because that service charge, that is a legal charge. You understand? So you cannot what, take that interest money and what, you're going to offset that. So I'm not going to remove the interest from the account, right? That is what, for the bank taking my $20 as service charge. No. The bank have all right to do that, right? So there's a service they can lawfully charge, right? You studied Hajj, what were they eating? I mean, what's it, right, before they go Hajj, right? Understand? Listen, not everybody working in the bank, right, their work impermissible, right? Meaning what? Just to work in the bank itself, remember that is an institute that what? An interest-based institute, right? So it's not a place that a Muslim should actually be, right? But we say that what? Not every single job in a bank is haram, right? The person who was guarded, no. Right. For example, a person guarded, right? Guarding the bank, the door in front, right? His work is what? Halal. His work is what? Lawful, right? People doing what? AC, this, that, whatever inside, right? That is lawful, right? Those people, okay, whose work directly involve what? Interest, as the hadith mentioned. They give interest. So listen, the bank manager is the one who's going to sign off the contract anyhow, right? The one who what gives the interest, right? The one who writes and records and bears witness to that interest being contract, then khalas, that work is what? Totally what? Prohibited, right? That work is totally prohibited. For example, if you look at the tellers, right? Tellers, what they do? They collect your money and this and that, they pay bills and whatever. So khalas, the tellers may not be what included in that part, right? May not be included. I know how the bank work is. Sometimes you work as a teller, then you work at the back, and I know how it works. But if your work is just what? Collecting money, right? Giving people what? Change, this, that, paying what? Opening an account, paying bills, this and whatever. It has nothing to do with what? The actual what? Interest contract, in the sense of what? You're not issuing any what? Loans, right? You're not being witness to any what? Loan transaction, then that could be what? Exempted, right? But even what? The work that are considered to be lawful, in the sense that what? There's no direct interest, transaction, it is still what? Makruh on the slight, even what? Work in that company, but nevertheless, the salary would be what? Permissible, right? But those positions that directly involves with the riba, as you mentioned, the loan officer, the one who gives the loan, the one who signs off the loan, the one who witnesses, and all of the, then that is totally what? Prohibited, right? And such income is also prohibited, right? That answer the question or no?
But the money derived from paying everybody comes from the interest.
Right.
The money derived from paying the security guard and everybody else comes from the guy who signs the loan.
Right. Good. He didn't ask that question. He gave I don't know if it's a fatwa he gave over there or a statement. No, but good statement. Meaning what? How is it that his question should have been, how is it that, okay, the security guard, his wages are permissible and lawful, when the fact is that the money from that same institution, is paying his wages, right? Understand? When they go to the bank, right, and they take a loan, or a person go to the bank and take a loan, how much interest they charge?
Depends on the criteria of the loan.
Alright? Understand here? The interest what? Is minimum. When I say minimum, if I give you what? If I lend you $10,000, right? I'll lend you $100,000 and I charge you interest of what? 10%. How much that would be? Right? $110,000. Right? So you have to pay back $110,000, right? If I lend it for 10% interest, listen. We just say that this is a haram contract, right? This is a interest-bearing contract, right? If I give you a $10,000, $100,000, and say, listen, for 1 year and 10% interest, then you would have to pay me back $110,000. From that $110,000, how much is permissible for me to accept? Just the principal amount, not so, which is $100,000. So this interest-bearing contract here, how much is what? Haram. 10%. My 100% remain halal. You understand? If I give you $100,000 with a 10% interest and you give me back $110,000, is that $110,000 the entire of it haram? No. The principal amount I gave you, which is $100,000, this is how much I should receive. The extra $10,000, that 10%, that is haram. You understand? Here now, the ulama they have mentioned with regards to a person's wealth. Alright? If a person has wealth, and within his wealth, there are some that what? Some wealth of his that are haram, and some wealth of his that are halal. In the sense that what? He gained this through what halal means, and he gained this through what haram means, and is what not possible to differentiate, but all his wealth mixed in one. This is connected to what a person's estate when if he were to die also, right? The ulama they have mentioned, if most of his wealth is halal, then the rule of halal would apply to his entire wealth. You understand? So you can eat by that person's house. Listen, this man, he has what? Some of his wealth is not halal. Right? Most of it is halal, but some is haram. Can I eat from this person's house? Right? Can I? The rule is what? Once most of his livelihood, his wealth is halal, that will take precedence, right? That the ruling will be based on that. Go back to the bank, right? With the bank now, most of the money in the bank, right, is what halal. The interest, what? Whether it be what 5%, 10%, 20%, right? It will be so much of anyhow. That amount in relation to what the halal amount of money in the bank type is a smaller amount. You understand? So a person who has a lawful job in the bank, his what? Even though what his wages may be what from the bank itself, right? Which majority of which is halal and permissible, his wealth will be what? His what? Wage will be what? Jaiz and permissible. Here we're speaking about a person whose job itself, right? Whose job itself is not permissible, right? Like the loan officer, the one who's what given the loan, even though, right, the money is coming, but most of it is halal and permissible, the entire wage of that person is haram. Why? Because the job itself is haram. I know that answers the question. You give back to them? But that clear?
Earlier discussion, you told us that once you attribute to like the marriage, like where I lead to, if my parents allow me to go on the deal, all of us would be held accountable.
Right. Right. So that's what we mentioned.
If I relate this to the same factor that is bank, everything is related. Because if I send my daughter out with a boyfriend, I would be held accountable too. It's the same thing. You loan officer who signed the paper. And the rest of people under. Because the guy who opened the door for her in the morning man, is very important to her.
Right. So good.
Everybody's
good. Very good. So at least we know people paying attention in the class, right? Listen. Everybody understand what he mentioned, right? Good point, right? Listen, the ulama, they have differentiated, the scholars, the jurists, they have what? Differentiated between what? What you call the sin itself, right? The action itself, and what? And aiding and abetting what? That action, right? So here, the security guard probably is what? Right? As we mentioned, whatever is connected to that what institute, that institute of riba, we mentioned is makruh, you should stay away from it. Right? Now we mentioned, okay, those what? Jobs that are totally what? Haram, right? And the jobs that are not haram, right? So here now, the security guard now, he may be what? Assisting in the sense what? He protecting an interest-based organization, right? Protecting it, right? That as compared to what? A person who actually given the interest is to what? Difference between the heavens and the earth. Alright? So here now, the scholars they differ, not they differ, but they differentiate between what? The sin itself, right? The actual sin itself and something in it connected to it. Right? Listen, if we were to apply the first rule in that every single thing connected to what? That sin, right? There's also haram, then you can't buy nothing from no grocery, you can't live on the face of the earth. Right? So that is what? That's impossible to carry on what? Human life. Right? So listen, you work in taxi, drop me out here. Hey, where you drop me out there for? I'm going to play a mark. No, I picking you up. Right? Every single, okay, you go in the grocery now, you buy something halal. Right? So you go on and ask the person, oh listen, where do you buy that from? Right? What kind of money you say, oh, I think I want to get money to buy. So every single thing what? You have to refrain from. That's what? So you know what? So there's a difference between the act itself, right? Understand? And assisting. And not only that, there are certain what actions like this one over here when the Prophet clearly outline the people what involved directly. Understand? So there's a difference, right? Some of the ulama they mentioned, listen, if you have a place to rent, you rent in a house, right? This is every single aspect. Listen, you see how difficult life would be. Right? You rent an apartment, right? Is it permissible for you to rent an apartment to a non-Muslim? If you look at the laws of Sharia, is it permissible for you to rent your apartment to what? A non-Muslim? Is it permissible? There are no laws of the Sharia stating that okay, you're not allowed to rent your premises to non-Muslims. So when you bring in a non-Muslim now, he bring in all his mufti and all his idols, and he worshiping Ram and Hanuman inside your premises. So now listen, you're responsible for that? No, that's not the Sharia. That's not what you're responsible for. You make a contract with him to what? Reside, to live. Khalas. Right? What he does while living inside there, he's accountable for that. Right? He is that responsible. You're not responsible for that. Right? But there are certain actions that a person what? Like the example he mentioned, okay, as a parent, you have to protect your children. That is your responsibility. Well, she asked to go with her boyfriend, I carry her, whatever they do. No, that is your responsibility, right? To protect the chastity of your children. So that is a direct responsibility of yours, right? So each situation, it's different, right? So you have to look at each situation in the scenario differently. Right? Any other questions? No, I like the questions. Good question. Listen, a person would only ask that question if they're listening attentively. Right? Otherwise, what he mentioned, okay, that's to clarify what probably seemed to be a apparent contradiction, right? So if you're not paying attention, then you can ask these questions. Jazakallah khairan, right? Now,
some things like you mentioned issues on alcohol. If I look at caption after that, I will like to say for money, at least I don't know. So if I put them in, I don't know. I will go.
Were you working taxi?
Working taxi. And so I thought about whatever I did. What do I do? And so you don't take out. And so you can't come from this. But you know in that book you have a piece around it.
How you know that?
And it's always you.
No, that's what?
When you say somebody is in a social and you are passing as a heat, they don't pick you up as a passenger to come from the camera. You don't read anything about that?
Understand over here, right? In what? In situations like these, right? Listen, don't ask, don't be too fast, right? No, serious, don't ask, right? And don't be too fast, right?
You're not being fast.
No, what I'm saying is what? The moment you're going to investigate, then what? You have to act upon that investigation. If you know it's wrong, he carrying over there, right? Listen, a man buy groceries, and within the groceries he has alcohol in it, right? You don't know that there's a possibility. But the man tell you, listen, I have what? Alcohol inside here, right? Listen, somebody come to sell you something, right? Understand? It's not your duty to question that person where you get it from and this and that, unless what you have, you have any proper evidence and you can assume otherwise, right? So you go to the vendor. So we get this banana from? Who you buy this from? Who's the man? Right? This one. Everything, you're not obliged to do that. Right? But if it becomes clear to you, clear as daylight, listen, this is a stolen item. Right? You don't buy it. Or this item, so you don't buy it. But you don't, it's not obligatory upon you to what? To go to that depth of investigation for everything. Right? So the man don't jump in your car, he go and print a song. Right? The thing about the taxi driver is can't help themselves. They must be talking non-stop and all. You ever see a taxi driver just quiet and driving? We go this, that, So they always get themselves in trouble. Meanwhile, listen, they come in, you go in Prince's song, then watch it come Barrackpore Prince's song, you jump in. Jump out, collecting money. So where you going? Where you doing? Who's the father? Who's the mother? Where you living? Right? And I mean, once you don't go to that extent, everything acts and acts and acts, right? Just leave it.
I asked a question because they thought that I'm involved in it. I saw a taxi.
Right, so that person, what? You try, what he has alcohol, right? Then don't pick him up, don't transfer him. He going in the rum shop over there, for sure, right? Or he could have just dropped him out, but he jumps on them, they walk. Right, and whatever he do, right? Drop him out and listen. You drop it here, right? Whatever this man want to do, if he want to go in the market, he want to go in the rum shop, that's up to him, right? You're not responsible for that, right?
Okay, so when we say the guy we are picking up the car, right? You see no alcohol in the hand, no beer, no bottle, nothing like that, right? But because he already drink it, he already drink the alcohol, have it, and he high, intoxicated. So you can't pick you up. Because he had the alcohol in the hand again, he had the alcohol.
You can't do that. You don't understand? That person intoxicated, right? So to transport, listen, an intoxicated person, you look at the laws of the Sharia, it has any rule, okay, it's prohibited to do that? No, so khalas. But you have the choice, understand? You don't have to do it, but you have the choice to carry him or not, right? So he just opened a whole kind of rooms over here. No, but these are, important questions, right? Listen, let's always go back to what? You're not responsible for the action of anybody, right? Yes, there are certain individuals you are directly responsible for their actions, right? When the Nabi mentioned, كُلُّكُمْ رَاعٍ وَكُلُّكُمْ مَسْئُولٌ عَنْ رَعِيَّتِهِ, every one of you are shepherds and every one of you are responsible for your flock. That man you pick up in your car, that is not from your flock, right? So khalas. No, but listen, if you drop the man home, you do him a favor, right? It's not because a person he drink alcohol, what he becomes any a murtad or an apostate in the fall of Islam, or So even what a person you do goodness, so what? So an individual they carry home, listen, the man drunk, if I don't carry home, what happened? He might get bunks in the road or this and that. So there's a good, your action, what you be rewarded for your action, right? He accountable for his action. Non-alcoholic beer. Alright, we'll stop with that. We'll close with that question. Alright. Well, listen, for it to be what? Non-alcoholic beer, first it must be what? Alcoholic. Alright? Listen, all what you see what? Non-alcoholic. First it must be alcoholic, and then you remove what? then you remove what? That intoxicating feature from it, right? You just have a non-alcoholic beer like that, right? So according to the FDA, if it is what? 0.05, if there's 0.05% of what? Alcohol or less, they consider that as what? Non-alcoholic, right? So understand the word non-alcoholic is what? A terminology. It doesn't actually mean no alcohol, right? It doesn't actually mean what? No alcohol. You need non-alcoholic are what? Those what? Beverages that has what? 0.5% of alcohol or less in there, right? So the Prophet ﷺ, he mentions ma askara kathiruhu faqaliluhu haram, that which intoxicates in what? Ma askara kathiruhu, that which intoxicates in a large amount, faqaliluhu haram, a little bit is also haram, right? A little bit is also haram. Listen, if a person what? If you were to ask, okay, if a person drinks what? How do you call it? Okay, why alcohol is what? Prohibited. A person will say because it intoxicates. No. Right? So it means what? If you base the ruling on what? The fact that it intoxicates, then what? If it doesn't intoxicate, the ruling won't apply. So that's not the case. If a person will take what? One, then you have coke or what? Alcohol, when they say some strong alcohol, punching, right? I don't know but if that's strong, how strong that is. But if you take a spoon, then I don't know, a person get drunk with it, or something less than that. If you take a spoon, you will get drunk with it. No, you will get drunk with it. So it means that you can take a teaspoon, and some people you can take to clean all the worms. And no, so even though you're not getting drunk with it, it is still haram. Askara yani kathiruhu faqaliluhu haram, that which intoxicates in a large amount, the smallest amount is also not prohibited. Alright? Except that in this case over here, the non-alcoholic beverage, right? A person can argue the point that listen, if even you were to drink a whole case, right, you will not be intoxicated. Right? So if that is the case, then what? A small amount would also what? That would be jaiz and permissible. So that's why many scholars, they give what? They give the permissibility of drinking that non-alcoholic beverage. Why? Because if you were to drink what? A large amount, it will not intoxicate. Right? It will not intoxicate. So it will be what? Jaiz and permissible. Except that when I always what? Recommend, listen, you refrain from these things. You have what? We call you have stages and you have open, the thing about it, a person, listen, you have a wine glass, you're not drinking wine, but why are you drinking a wine glass? Why are you drinking a wine glass? Khalas. So a person dislikes something, he dislikes everything connected to that, right? So what's wrong with drinking it? No, khalas. If you want to go around and argue, yes, you can argue, right? But that a wine glass specifically for wine, why you want to drink in that? From one would lead to the next, and that's how the shaitan works, right? Non-alcoholic beverage, right? Champagne, you see a bottle, everything. No, but naturally what? A person, he has a natural dislike for these things, right? If you want to go and argue in the line of halal and haram, yes, it will be halal. But khalas, one could lead to the next. You have what? The vaping and this and that, and nothing wrong with the vaping, nothing wrong with that. It would, it leads to other things. Alright? So you have, it's better that what? You close that door. Alright? Sometimes you have what? You want to try something else. This might have what? Guess what? 1% or 0.5% and this and then go it. Because the same people who make it what? The non-alcoholic, they also make what? The alcoholic. Alright? So yes, if you're looking for the fatwa, if it's what? Halal or haram, yes, it's halal. Right? But then the lines are taqwa and piety and khalas, and in abstinence is better, right? That is better.
Just understand correctly, because I can have some of them that have a very small percentage. It is not non-alcoholic on the front label. When you really find how many back contains 0.05.
Yeah, as I mentioned, non-alcoholic, that is what? A terminology. It's not okay.
So that one is completely haram.
No. that one, even that non-alcoholic, right, is right point, it's not 0.5 you know, 0.05, right? So this amount, it doesn't really intoxicate you anyhow. So if a person drinks that, he's not doing something which is haram, right? Why? Because if a person were to consume even with a whole case of that non-alcoholic beverage, right, he would not be intoxicated, right? So it is, that is lawful. But here what we mentioned is what a person should refrain from these things, right? Alright, inshallah we'll continue next week. We'll continue this entire month with this topic, the topic of halal and haram, and what in different aspects with regards to what food, animals, this, that, livelihood, whatever, right? There are many topics over here to be discussed. We'll do this month inshallah, and the next month probably just have 1 or 2 classes remaining before Qurbani. So we'll touch on Qurbani probably next month, 1 or 2 classes, right? جزاكم الله خيرا. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.